Hi, everyone. So, today's Tutorial Thursday. And 3 weeks ago, I started a series on conflict resolution that was inspired by one of our followers. And so, decided I like to use topics and share stuff on here on damselfly transformations. I love to obviously share damselflies, but also share information that's relevant to you. So when I have a follower, post something of interest that might interest them, or yeah, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, I will definitely do my best to create content that will be helpful to you. So never hesitate to leave comments. You can PM me with, um, suggestions and ideas and recommendations for things you'd like to learn about. So I started this series, like I said, about 3 weeks ago, inspired by a follower, about how to resolve conflict. What are strategies that we can use to resolve conflict? And this can be at work, it can be at home. And so today we're going to continue on that. So far, 2 weeks ago, yeah, so 2 weeks ago, I posted an infographic about strategies for recognizing our emotions when we are working on resolving a conflict. Conflicts, for most of us, are situations that can trigger a lot of emotions, right? They're not easy. A lot of us don't like conflict. Most of us don't like conflict. So it's really, really important when we're working with someone and we're trying to solve a conflict in our lives. It's important to be able to recognize our own emotions and name them so that we can process them properly. And you also notice that the series is based on what we can do. Like what can I do in a conflictual situation to help solve? Now, what the other person is going to do in a conflictual situation is not under our control. So the strategies, you'll notice, have nothing to do with trying to make someone else do something, or someone else say something, or someone else change something. The strategies that we want to learn for resolving conflict have to do with what we can do ourselves to help resolve the conflict. And if we learn these strategies, we will influence how the other person acts, reacts, or how much the other person is motivated to work with us to solve the conflict. And if not, well, that's another series. If we get to a point where we're dealing with someone who absolutely refuses to respect our boundaries, that's a whole another topic that I won't be covering today. So the other part, the other strategy that I posted on last week for Tutorial Thursday was about identifying our triggers. So triggers are situations. They can be words. They can be situations, events that trigger something in us that activates a very high emotional response. We all have these. And so it's important to learn how to identify those because once we're triggered in a situation, our brains tend to get hijacked emotionally and we can be very reactive. So this is another really important skill. But on to today. What skill are we working on or focusing on today? It's active listening. So, when we're working with an individual, or maybe more than one individual, in trying to resolve a conflict, active listening is very, very, very crucial to really hear the person that we're conversing with and that we're trying to work out a solution with, right? So, we're going to talk about strategies that we can use, skills that we can learn that are going to help us become active listeners. And so, the first thing we want to do when we're preparing to have a conversation with someone, maybe a brave and courageous conversation that's going to help us solve a problem or resolve a conflictual situation is to prepare ourselves mindfully. So you really take the time to maybe do a breathing exercise, a mindfulness exercise, a little meditation. If that works for you, go for a walk, whatever you need to clear your mind and come into the conversation without any biases, prejudices, without any emotions that, or at least being clear on the emotions so that we don't get carried away with how we feel. Now, the next strategy for active listening is maintaining eye contact. So, really, not in a scary, stary kind of way or creepy kind of way, but looking the person in the eye and showing them that we are listening, that we are engaged in the conversation, and that we're interested in what they have to say. And so the third strategy for active listening is minimizing interruptions. And this is something that I know for myself I have to work with on a regular basis. So really listening and not interrupting, certainly not interrupting the person mid sentence. And if at all, even leave space for silence, just so that if the person wants to say anything else, and moments of silence can encourage someone to continue speaking and continue sharing. So you really, really want to be super careful not to interrupt the person you are listening to when you are trying to actively listen and deeply listen to what they're saying. Now, the fourth strategy for active listening is reflecting and clarifying. What that means is taking the time when someone has said something to reflect back what you've heard and gain any clarification if that's necessary. So you can paraphrase or summarize what they've said and to make sure you've heard what they're saying. And that gives them the opportunity to clarify or to indicate if there's anything that was misunderstood. And like again, these strategies help you better understand where the other person is coming from. So it gives you the tools necessary to resolve the conflict and also makes the other person feel valued, feel heard. And then we create the environment for two people wanting to move forward and resolve a conflict. We're keeping everyone out of defensive mode, out of reactive mode. So you can't do anything about how the other person's going to react, but you can do everything you can to create an optimum situation. So when you're in the clarifying stage and you're working around that, a really good tool to use is open-ended questions. So instead of asking questions that are like about yes or no, uh, ask open-ended questions. For example, how would you can ask a question like, how would you see this problem resolved? What are some of the solutions that you think would be relevant to this issue? And try to focus on how and what and maybe where questions. Now, you can ask why questions, but why questions tend to put people on the defensive because we often tend to use as human beings in our conversation, why did you say that to me? Or why are you behaving that way? And it's often we use a why when we're reactive. So it tends to not be the best type of question to ask. Now, if you ask it, very carefully, but it can work, but try to stay with how and what questions, and that'll really be helpful. And now the next strategy is to observe the body language, the nonverbal cues, the other person, but also your own body language. So if you really pay attention to the person, you're really watching them when they're speaking and you're trying to hear what they're saying, um, and you notice there's maybe some aggression in their facial expression or in their body expression or any kind of emotion, you can and we'll talk about empathy in a second, but you can empathize with that. And the questions that you can ask can be relevant to helping them process that emotion, or at least you respecting that emotion. And you want to do the same thing with yourself. You want to be careful what kind of body language you use. Now, when we're resolving a conflict or when we're in a conflictual situation, some people are of the mindset that you want to maintain a powerful position and show the other person who's boss, right? So some people might sit up and point their fingers or stand up, and so they're standing higher um, than the other person, or intimidating the other person with their body language. um, Although some people do use this type of strategy when it comes to body language or trying to solve a conflict with someone else, it's not what I would recommend if you want to solve a conflict in a way that's beneficial and win win to both you and the other party. And that is possible. It is possible to find win win situations where both parties can leave feeling empowered and feeling like they were listened to. Now, this next strategy or skill set to use when you're problem solving or you're trying to resolve a conflict is empathy, right? And so if you're really listening and you're asking questions and you're opening yourself up to understanding where the other person is coming from, then you can empathize. You can get a sense of their own fear or their sadness or whatever they're feeling about the situation, and you can find solutions that respect that address that, and you can behave, and you can not act but react. Act, I mean, not react, in a way that is going to be beneficial to both of you. So developing empathy is super important when you want to solve a conflict. And again, sometimes the other person isn't going to be using these skills. Sometimes, a lot of times, the other person won't necessarily be have mastered these skills. But what you will notice is that if you use them, it will make them feel more comfortable. It will make them feel safer, and they will tend to mirror back your behavior. Okay, so now this is a huge one, right? Avoiding planning your response while you're listening. And I mean, God knows, I mean, I know I do that. It goes right with the interrupting phase. The opposite of active listening is sitting there thinking about your response and what you're going to say to the person once they finally shut up, right? And often we do that. Now, that's something we always want to do. We want to listen to people and really listen and not try to take over the conversation. But when it comes to, trying to resolve a conflict, this becomes even more important. So you're not thinking about what your next comment is going to be or even what your next question is going to be. You're really listening to what the person is saying. All right, so this next one is creating a supportive environment. So you invite or you ask someone to have a conversation because you're dealing with a conflict with that person and you want to help solve. You want to find a solution for both of you. And so invite that person into a space where they're going to feel comfortable. Now, this is interesting because there are a lot of there are a lot of people, and you might even hear some people say that what you want to do is put them in a situation where they're going to be a little bit intimidated, right? You bring them into the office if you're the boss, and have them sit across the desk, and you put on your show of authority and or whatever, right? Or you have them come into your office as opposed to theirs, so that they're a little bit intimidating and they're not in their own space. And there's some people who will say, use these strategies. You want to intimidate, you want to assert yourself. But again, that's not what's conducive to finding solutions that are win-win, where both people come out feeling good about themselves and feeling empowered and feeling like there really was a solution that was found that was in the best interest of both people. So, invite them into a space that's neutral. and a space that's private. No one else is going to hear what's being said, right? That's super important. All right, and the other thing is practicing patience. Um, you know, conflicts conflicts are complicated. They exist because we often have two individuals with two separate needs that are trying. People are trying to meet their needs, and the needs don't align. The conflicts exist because we have trouble communicating those needs. Conflicts exist because we're human and we don't all want the same things at the same time. We don't all have the same priorities. We don't all have the same values, and we all don't all have the same, uh, way of doing things. So it takes time for two people or a group of people to find a win-win solution. It takes time and it takes the will to do it. It takes the wanting to do it. It's possible. It's always possible to find a win-win solution in a conflictual situation. And yes, there are times when we're dealing with someone who's narcissistic and who isn't going to budge. But that's not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about resolving conflict with most people out there who, with time and with patience and with using these strategies, we have a really good chance of being able to find a solution. Now, the other thing I want to say as I end this video is that conflict resolution is a skill like any other skill. And all of the things that I'm going to go through, I think we've done four now, no, three. So, learning about our emotions, figuring out what our triggers are. And today we talked about active listening, right? These are three, there are seven others. These are skills that we do not need or should not at all be ashamed if we have not learned those skills. And often what happens, I think, in conflictual situations is people feel intimidated by the fact that they're not sure how to do it. And they don't feel like they're equipped necessarily to do it. And it's hard for us to admit and be compassionate with ourselves when we lack certain communication skills, or maybe I'm not a really good active listener, right? I interrupt all the time. I know that. I try to get my point across, but a lot of us do not. We didn't learn these skills, or we at least have some of them that we still need to work on. So never be ashamed of that, and be compassionate with yourself as you're learning these skills so that you can honestly look at and say, you know what? I don't think I do that. That's okay. I'm human. A lot of humans, as humans, we have things we need to learn. So anyway, that is Tutorial Thursday. That's what we covered this week. So, have fun with this, kind of like, and maybe in the next few days, practice active listening and pay attention to um, your behavior when you're listening. Are you looking at people in the eye? Are you thinking about what that next thing is that you want to say? Are you interrupting? So look at all of these different strategies and just pay attention to how you use them, not just in conflictual situations. If you use active listening within your every other relationship, it'll go a long way to enriching and strengthening those relationships. So have a great day, everyone. I hope that was helpful. Bye.